Call this meeting to order, the September the 1st, 2015 Rutherford County Board of Education. If you will join me, please, for the Pledge to the Allegiance. I'll do it myself this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For our moment of silence this evening, let's especially remember the Loop family, the student at Siegel High School, which you've seen some in the media recently. So please remember that family in this time of moment of silence, please. And Mr. Graham, Tim Graham, one of our employees, is with us 39 years. With us till from 19 years of age, worked with Mr. Clardy over in maintenance, one of our locksmiths, very much missed. Okay. Thank you. I believe our first item of agenda will be the election of the board chair for the 2015-2016 year. So the floor is now open for nominations for the chairman of the Rutherford County Board of Education. Mr. Hodge.
Nomination first, before I do that, I'd like to thank our chairman, Mr. Blair, for the great job he did this year leading us. And with that in mind, I'd like to nominate him to lead us another year.
Second.
Second. Ms. Moore. Any other nominations? We can vote or we can elect by acclamation. Somebody want to make a motion, or what do you?
Sir, I'll move that nominations be closed and election by acclamation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Blair, I'll hand you the gavel back. Yes, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Board members, thank you for allowing me to serve you and have this opportunity to serve this next year. I'm grateful to get to do it, and it's certainly it is fun, actually, because you're so involved, and as we all are, into the educating our children and promoting public education, and it certainly is gratifying to get to do that. So, again, thank you very much. We'll move on to accepting nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr.
I'd like to thank you for your year of service, too. And I'd like to thank Mr. Hodge for doing such an excellent job, and not only as chairman for 2 years, but as vice chair this past year. And I'd like to nominate him for this year as well to serve as our vice chairman.
Thank you. And second, Mr. Estes, okay? Further nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we close nominations and elect by acclamation.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Mr. Hodge, thank you again for your service, and I certainly have enjoyed the mentoring when you were chair, and you'll always be Chairman Hodge too, so thank you very much. Okay, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Holliday and Mr. Hodge. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. and approval of the consent agenda. Mr. Young and Mr. Hodge.
You have not had a work session, so there are some things on there that if you're interested in, we're prepared to discuss. Most of the things under C are the routine bids that we do. The audit request, E, we had several bids this time. We did not select the lowest bid. You may want Mr. Sandvig to kind of address that in case you ask a question. I mean, I'm just throwing that out,
Sure.
that you may want to kind of hear some feedback in that.
That's probably a great idea, Mr. Odom. Mr. Sandvig, if you would, please.
All right. Well, this obviously is a professional service, and we did get a couple of proposals. One was from an out-of-state firm, not north or south of us, but east of us, long ways away from us, just time-wise. We deal a lot with these people. One of the proposals started out close to 10,000 lower, but each year had an escalating fee. I was not comfortable with the number of hours that they were committing to audit staff hours. In another of the proposals, I just, in looking them over, I felt staying with Matlock Clements for the money and our comfort level with the product that we get. And Mr. Clement, or not Mr. Randall, but his cousin, Andy Matlock, they are available for, as questions come up, if an investigation is needed, all that, and they've been very good at working with us over the years.
As I took a look at this, that was one of the things that jumped out to me was the tenure of history that we've had with Matlock Clements, and how I felt like that would be an effective choice as well. I wasn't aware of the other bidders, but when I saw Matlock Clements, I went, yep, there we go.
Right. Yes, sir. Further discussion or questions for Mr. Sandvig? Anything else that you would like to point out?
Unless you have something else, I think most of the others are fairly routine things, but number B, the healthy meals or something like that, I didn't think that would be much, but that's just kind of a grant that's being applied, software and some other things for USDA.
If there's not questions or further discussion, Mr. Sandvig?
This goes back to item D, with my apologies. The purchasing department wanted to say that they were not told of the deadline on that vehicle, or
Yes.
it was not, we did not comply, we weren't told of it, and then, oh, it was a deadline, so.
Evidently Golden Circle with the state bid, and that was one of the state bids on it, they had a deadline to end, and we weren't aware of that deadline. That's your issue. That's purchase request D, item D. So they would not honor that price any longer. That's what it amounts to.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussions and or questions? Yes, sir.
It should be, make a note, and we'll tell Mr. Tackett we should not see any more. That should be the last cleanup since we're already playing ball.
Good point, Mr. Estes. I don't think we want to see any more submissions for football. Point well taken, Mr. Estes. Good. Anybody else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. No visitors? Okay. Mr. Odom, number 8.
Number 8 is our spotlight on education tonight, and we implemented RTI squared last year, basically, and we're in kind of the second year of that. We repurposed people, hired some additional ones for get our interventionists and coaches in the schools. And so I think it was certainly wise. I told Mr. Duke if he would come and make a presentation, let's see how we did last year with RTI. And then that's the best judge what happened after we did it. And we'll go from there. Mr. Duke? Trey Duke is over our RTI and also instructional technology.
Thank you for asking me to come, Mr. Odom. I was excited to be able to put together some numbers for you to show how we did with our RTI program last year. It wasn't a small initiative. It wasn't something we took lightly. The support of Mr. Odom and Mr. Zago, especially to make sure that we did this and did it correctly for our students in our building. So I want to quickly kind of go over some things with you of what we saw last year. A quick summary of last year, we did do our full implementation of the state's framework in all elementary and middle schools. We had the option of wavering until this year for middle, but we felt like we had gained a lot of momentum and we wanted to keep that going. And I think you'll see, especially for middle school, the results paid off. The state's plan did target students scoring below the 25th percentile nationally in reading and math to receive that additional intensive skills-based intervention. So again, we're looking at our students who are nationally below the 25th percentile, our most at-risk students in the building, from elementary, middle school, and this year as we had high school, especially when we look at high school graduation, when we look at students who struggle in high school, there's often a very strong correlation that didn't start in 9th grade, that started in 2nd grade and 1st grade, and so trying to catch that early. But that was what the state did. Here in Rutherford County, I worked with Mr. Zago, and we created an RTI plan that included not just the state framework, but really making sure we built on the work we were already doing around the PLC and interventions for all kids. And that really was our goal. Our goal is to ensure that all students who need additional help are going to get that additional help regardless of where they fall percentile-wise. So if you look, this graphic kind of shows a quick summary of I say, our RTI plan in a nutshell. Our goal, and one of our goals for our kids, not our only goal, but one goal is that they're proficient on that TN Ready assessment. Before that was TCAP, we know that we want them proficient on TN Ready. What the state says if they're falling below the 25th percentile nationally, we're going to call them Tier 2, and below the 10th percentile, Tier 3. And that's really the focus of the state's plan. What we know in Rutherford County is we have a whole lot of students that fall above the 25th percentile but are not yet proficient on TN Ready. We wanted to make sure and don't have the standards they need to be proficient on the assessment. So what we wanted to do was make sure our plan, again, went beyond the state minimum to really include all students. Now tonight, I'm going to talk specifically about the Tier 2 and Tier 3, our most at-risk kids in the district, but I did want to just point out that our plan does include all students. Again, for those kids that are above the 25th percentile, we're giving them standards-based intervention. That's led by the PLC team. That's not new for Rutherford County. We're identifying kids who need additional help, and as a PLC team, they're working with those kids. But for those bottom 25th percentile kids, that's where our interventionists came in. Those positions Mr. Odom talked about, we repurposed. Some of those new ones we hired. And those interventionists worked, again, on those skill deficits that our kids have that are really preventing them from even accessing the standards in the classroom. And so really targeting our instruction for those kids in addition to their regular classroom time was our goal last year. So when I look at numbers, just to kind of break it down into some numbers of what we ended up serving last year, in elementary for math, or those Tier 2 and Tier 3, it was about 11% of our population, or roughly a little over 1,700 students. These numbers are approximations, and I put that there because part of the process is kids sometimes move in and they move out based on how they're doing. And so this is kind of a snapshot of that day, the numbers that were submitted to me. So just know that those numbers at times were higher and at times lower. A rough estimate for our reading, about 15% of our students, a little over 2,300 kids, qualified for that Tier 2 or Tier 3 basic reading support. If you compare that to what the state says, and this is our whole district, obviously some of our schools were higher. If you get to some of our more at-risk schools, they had a higher percentage of their kids that qualified there. At some of our schools that are not as at risk, they had a lower percentage there. So if you look at the model, and we say that's kind of our goal, is about 3% to 5% at Tier 3 and about 10 to 15 at Tier 2, and we are under that as a district, so we're excited about that as well. In the middle grades, about 9% of our students needed some kind of math intervention, about 910 middle schoolers. And then about 7.7% needed reading, which is about 769. Now, middle school gets a little different because we have scheduling issues and how do we get them both. So those numbers sometimes fluctuate as a kid may spend some time in math and then move to reading. So again, that was at the day they submitted the numbers to me. So you can see overall we're under the percentage of kids that we're serving as far as what the state would say would be the most as a district, but we do have some schools that are a little higher than that. So let's look at how they did perform with the extra support. We gave them anywhere from 30 to an hour extra a day of that intensive support in those small groups. What I did is I gathered their data from TVOS for all of our 4th through 8th graders who received Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. So because of the nature of TVOS, we didn't get it for our K1 and 2 students who also received those interventions and had great growth. And I compared what we look at, which is their NCE score from previous year to current year. So basically, I looked at where did they perform with their NCE score at the end of 2014 after a year of RTI. What was their new score? Did they improve, or did they go backwards, or did they stay the same? I averaged that growth to generate kind of a basic growth score for all of our students at each school. How to kind of summarize it, we know that if they have an NCE growth score of 0, that's 1 year's growth for 1 year's time. So if they were had a 56 NCE at the end of 2014 and had a 56 NCE at the end of 5th grade or end of 2015, 1 year's growth for 1 year's time. That's the expected growth. So obviously we know for our most at-risk kids, if we're going to close the achievement gap, which is what our goal is for RTI, then we have to see more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. We have to grow faster than that 0 to see that. So if I kind of look at our average real fast, and I'm going to show you the district average, I'm going to pinpoint a couple of schools for you. When we look at our elementary schools, in reading, our average NCE growth was 1.57, and our average math growth was 2.17, well above that average, the expected growth of 0. What does that show me? Tell us here at the district that our kids who are getting those intensive interventions at the elementary level are growing faster than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, which is exciting for our students. I really wish I could figure out, we're still playing with how I can get 1st and 2nd grade data in there because I know we're seeing some strong growth there as well. So really exciting as a district average. But I wanted to pinpoint a couple schools that really showed some amazing growth and really worked really well with their kids at their most at risk. I'll start with Buchanan. If you look at the district average, their reading growth was 3.4 and their math was 6.2. Extremely high growth for those students. That was repeated at Cedar Grove Elementary with a growth of 6.8 for reading and 6.4 for math. This is when we're talking about students moving not just from the basic to the proficient level, but from below basic to almost proficient with these intensive interventions. Walter Hill had some great growth as well, with a 5.2 growth in reading and a 6.3 NCE growth in math. Again, I could have listed several schools here. These are some I wanted to point out that really showed what we can do with our most at-risk kids when we target that and are very intentional with the help and get them the help that they need. When I look at middle schools, I got even more excited because middle schools, this was a newer for them, really having to step back and say, how do I teach a 7th grader who's struggling with basic reading and basic math how to do basic reading and basic math? Especially for teachers who have taught those 7th and 8th grade standards for so long. It was a little more of a stretch for them professionally, but we saw some really good growth. The district average for reading was 3.5 NCEs. Why does that make me excited? Because I know the older they get, the harder it is to intervene. And the older they get, we're looking at high school graduation at this point, and I can see we're making the difference for these kids when it's going to get to high school. An average for the district of 2.6 for math. But again, just to say, I want to spotlight a couple schools, and we'll start with Christiana Middle, whose average NCE growth for reading was 6.7, which is huge, and 3.5 for math. Laverne Middle School had an average NCE growth of 4.6 and for reading and 3.3 for math. And Blackman Middle School had that average growth of 6.6 for reading and 6.5 for math. Some great work going on with our at-risk kids at that school as well. What's most exciting about the middle schools is every school showed growth above zero in some way at the middle level. So I was really excited to show those middle school interventionists that work they did paid off, and we're seeing that more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. We did play with high schools a little bit, and I said we played with high schools a little bit, and we're doing more with it this year. But we asked a couple of our high schools to help us last year with intervention at the high school level. We looked at Oakland, Smyrna, and Laverne. Our focus was not high school, so a lot of it was them learning on their own. We gave them the tools, we coached, but our focus was really elementary and middle last year. We have one more year this year before we have to have this implemented next year for high school. So when I look at the results, and I'm going to show you it a little bit just from one high school, I looked at it a little different. I looked at what was their percentile ranking when they left 8th grade, and what was their percentile ranking at the end of English 1 EOC. And I looked at Smyrna High School specifically, which had some pretty great growth. In her Tier 3 class, 74% of her Tier 3 students showed a percentile growth from their 8th grade TCAP to 9th grade EOC, and the growth range was anywhere from 2 percentile points to 29 points. If you look at the growth of 10 percentile points, that's all of the students that she served last year that had that data. But if you look at the 74 who showed growth, their average percentile growth was 14.5 percentile points. Again, been taking the time to really target those interventions for those students. So we're seeing already growth at all levels, and our goal this year is to continue that. What's different this year? We are adding Tier 3 reading in all 7 of our traditional high schools. So we now have that Tier 3 reading class in all 7 of our traditional high schools. As I said, last year, as a district, we were supporting and not focusing as much on them as we focused on elementary and middle. This year, my team and I are focused a lot on high schools, continuing to support middle and elementary, but really focus on how does this work in high school. And it's a different beast in high school. We talk to the state a lot about schools that are trying to figure it out. I'm convinced we can, but and to make sure that those kids coming in 9th grade can and will graduate and we catch them early. We have our coaches in our building, and I was talking to elementary this morning, the principals, and I mentioned these 3 things. What are we focused on in the department, and what are our coaches in our building, our academic coaches focused on? Obviously, supporting Tier 2 and Tier 3. We want to see the growth again. We don't want to plateau. That growth we saw last year, we want to see it again. We want to make sure that we're focused on now moving the good things that happened in Tier 2 and Tier 3 to that standards-based time and helping our PLCs replicate it there. And then also, we want to be just as intentional with our highest achieving, our quintile 4 and 5 kids, as we're being with some of our lowest achieving students. Last year, we focused real heavily on identifying our students who were furthest behind and lowest achieving, and really identifying those students and making plans for them. As our coaches in our building this year, our goal is let's do the same thing for our highest achieving students this year and move them on. So again, we had a great year. It was good work that our coaches and interventionists did, and we're excited to see the success continue this year.
Schools that are showing great success, what are we doing to share that information with other schools that are not successful?
Absolutely. So we meet our coaches in our building, our academic RTI coaches in the building. They meet monthly. We actually meet in several different ways. In person, they meet monthly to talk about what's working, what's not working. I have a good team up here with Kathy Darty and Janice Fox, who their job is they spend every day in the schools, looking at our schools, coaching the coaches, coaching the interventionists. But they meet monthly as their own PLC to talk about what's working, what's not working, and we share a lot of strategies there. We do a lot of cross-school work. I was at a school yesterday, and that coach is going to take a couple teachers, and she's going to visit another high-performing school to say, okay, what are you doing in this building, so they can take those ideas back. The great thing about having the coaches in the building, I think the administrators will tell you, it's having someone in the building they can look to whose main focus is just instruction. And so the principals are really depending on them to say, where are the strengths and weaknesses in our program instructionally, and how can we leverage what's going on in the other buildings to make that happen in our building?
Mr. Young, one of the things that we did, if you remember, we used to have, as we hired new teachers, we had mentors go out of the central office. Well, they'd have 60 or 70 they were trying to take care of, and they would go meet with somebody. I'll be back in 2 weeks or something. You know, that's just not the way to grow people like you want to grow them. So by having a coach in the building now, then that person is there every day to sit with that new teacher and look at their data, look at the needs of those students, and plan that lesson together. And then actually our coaches, principals, are having them go observe them teach, make suggestions. In fact, most of them, before the principal starts their formal observations with them, they'll have the coach go watch them a few times to see how it's working. He also, you said you meet once a month, but you meet by
Yeah, we
Microsoft 365. You might tell
Yeah,
me
every
what you're doing
week,
now.
because we have the new, and again, this is something, I'm going to step to my instructional technology hat, because we use Office 365 in the district, and we are able to do those remote meetings through our Skype program. And so every Thursday, I have a 10-minute meeting with every coach. They don't have to leave their building, but every Thursday, 8 o'clock, all 40 of the coaches log in. We have a quick 10-minute meeting. We can handle problems. We can talk about what's working. And so when we come to our PLC meetings, we can focus on instruction and not business, because we handle that business stuff every Monday for 10 minutes, get it out of the way. We're trying to do the same thing we are doing the same thing with our technology coaches in the building, but having that 365 platform and having Skype, where all of a sudden, if I need to meet with every coach in the district to talk about something that we need to do, I don't have to call a meeting. They don't have to spend 45 minutes driving here for a 10-minute conversation in 45 minutes. They just need 10 minutes in their office. We can get together. We can all meet, all talk, all converse, and it takes 10 minutes out of their day instead of 2 hours out of their day.
Can you give us a glimpse, or maybe, like you said, a snapshot of what the actual intervention might be on the elementary level? What the actual intervention is?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we haven't as a district said this is the one program every school has to be implementing. What we have done is provided lots of resources and lots of on-site coaching. So when you go in those intervention classrooms, you're seeing small groups, you're seeing teachers working at tables with kids, very individualized, very specific. Usually the group is somewhere around 3 to 4 at that group table working with them. We have very specific plans for that student. Every student, when we put them in Tier 2 and Tier 3, we write an intervention plan for them. We say, this is their area of deficit. And then part of it is that ongoing progress monitoring, where every couple weeks we're doing quick 1 to 3 minute assessments. Are they growing or not? So then every 4.5 weeks, those coach and the interventionist and the administrator will sit down and say, what students are growing, what students are not growing, what do we need to do to change it? I love going into intervention classrooms because you see some amazing teaching. When you have students who have deficit areas as low as some of our students have, and we have to correct that, you have to have that small group environment. So in the middle schools, it may be closer to 10 students in that classroom, but usually when you walk in, you're going to see 3 or 4 working on a computer program that's adapted, that's meeting their need, while that teacher is pulling 4 or 5 of them to work in a small group. Then they rotate, then they switch. And that they're getting that daily time with the teacher on the skill that's really what they need. We always say we don't focus on standards in that class. We're not teaching the 8th grade standards to 8th grade students. We're saying, wait a minute, do we need to go down to 7th or 6th grade skills that you missed? Let's fill those holes in. And that's what our goal is in that. It has to be individualized because the older they get, the more holes they have in different places. And so the teachers really have to be masters of figuring out what is it that's keeping this kid from accessing grade level content, and how do I as the teacher fill that hole?
And we use the Ames Web Screener. Every
do use
student,
Ames
you
Web.
might mention that.
Yep. We use Ames Web K9 now, and that's kind of what tracks our data that we can look at and look at their graphs. And, again, every other week we're looking, is this kid making any improvement? And if not, let's adjust our instruction so we can make sure they're making that improvement. We know a lot about the kids, and when we know a lot about them, it's easier for us as educators to make those instructional decisions to really move them.
Mr. Duke, one of the things that I wanted to highlight is I believe I would be accurate to say the transient nature of our county, the amount of growth that we have here, the new jobs and people moving into the area, that's a large component of these deficiencies. It's not because another Rutherford County school has somehow dropped the ball, but they've arrived at 7th grade, and we've evaluated them, and we need to get them up to our course level.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's like I said, for every student, there's a different reason why they're in that class, and we evaluate that, and our job really isn't to figure out why they're there, but we just know they're there, and so what are we going to do to fill those holes, and what holes need to be filled. But you're exactly right, especially more on the north end of the county where it's a little more transient and things like that. That's where you may see higher populations of kids coming in, and we assess them, and we know they're in our building now. Here are the holes. How do we get that student caught up to where we can be?
Another component is really, I think, a hallmark of Rutherford County schools. It's not just that we have Office 365, but we use Office 365. And I thought that was really, important there. I know that also shows up in our facilities as well, where we're specifically building smaller classroom circumstances for these intervention opportunities. So as we continue to grow, we recognize that this is a part of our future, and it's part of our physical design as well.
Absolutely.
The last thing is, I really want to applaud you for the goal this coming year for focus on the higher achievers. Mr. Ash at Laverne High School had shared with me, there's so much emphasis on those who may have a deficiency that sometimes we run out of time or we run out of resources for those who are bumping up against the ceiling. And we need to be able to give them the wings to achieve their greatness, and I think it's excellent that we've got that in place.
Yeah, and as I stated, that's one of our goals as I work. I'm lucky enough to get to work with the coaches is when we did our trainings in July, that's what I said. We need to know we call them our 4th and 5th quintile kids, our highest achieving kids by name, just like we do our lowest achieving and our most at-risk kids. We need to, they're both, if we're not careful, we got to watch both and make sure, again, we don't grow one and not the other. How do we grow them all?
This is very similar to an IEP for every student. You've heard that before, because when you know, in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, parents and I think other grandparents out there be interested to know, heavy phonics, phonemic awareness. We're doing Orton Gillingham training this week with coaches and teachers and all to do that. So building the base and coming on up with it. But it's just really a lot of things. A kid needs to know basically how to read by 3rd grade, folks. I mean, that's kind of the measure that you have across the country. They used to talk about the kids that were behind in 3rd grade to predict the number of prison cells that would be needed later on. It's just absolutely critical, and now we've kind of got something to identify, work with, and people in place to help these students. And an NCE score is a normal curve equivalent. Don't think that's not huge when you see 1, 2, 3, or 6% that I saw up there some. That's relevant to everybody else in the country. So when you move up 2% or something like that, you've leapfrogged a lot of people to get your position in that. So the steps may look small, but they're huge for that child.
Very impressive presentation.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Duke, I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, and congratulations on the terrific results. Really proud to see those. Can you share with me how, when one of the students is identified, or students identified for the need for this intervention, how do we communicate that with the parents, and are the parents given periodic updates on the progress?
So we screen at the beginning of the year. We actually screen multiple times throughout the year, but we screen at the beginning of the year. We also, at the end of last year, we send letters home to the parents with their progress and whether or not we anticipate they'll continue to need the help the next year. But once we decide a student is going to be in intervention, the coach in that school sends home the parent a letter saying, we're going to pull him for intensive intervention. He's not going to be missing his core classes. This is when they're going to come. Here's who the teacher is. And then every 4.5 weeks, we send home, with report cards, we send home progress on how he's doing in intervention. We don't want parents to be caught off guard or surprised if their kids are struggling. I always say we don't do RTI to qualify students for special education, but we know a byproduct of a student not showing growth may be special education. We don't want to have that conversation with the parent and they're blown away because they didn't know their kid was that far behind or was missing those skills. So again, every 4.5 weeks, we alert them when they go into a tier, we alert them if they move tiers, if they come out of the tiers, and then every 4.5 weeks they get in writing an update from the school.
He said something that I wouldn't expect you necessarily to recognize. Tier 1 is for every student. If you're once upon a time, if you were in 3rd grade and behind, we might instruct you in 1st grade level. But with the way this process works now, every child in 3rd grade gets Tier 1 instruction in 3rd grade content. Then we go back with this additional time that we do with Tier 2 and 3, and you supplement that. What are the deficit skills that student might have, again, to help them catch up? You know, you really can't catch up if you lose the year. If you teach back a year, how are you going to catch up? Because you just lost another year. So we're better at that. We've learned something there. So every child gets Tier 1 instruction plus is what it amounts to if you need that instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Again, excellent presentation. Thank you, Mr. Odom. 9A.
9A is financial matters, and this actually fits right in with what we're just talking about here because this is one of those interventions. It's the Read 180. Amendment of Read 180 System 44 Intervention Solutions for Smyrna High School, Smyrna Middle School, Laverne Middle School. The Curriculum and Instruction Department is seeking to amend the previously approved motion for Scholastic's Reading Intervention Program, Read 180, System 44, for use in Tier 3 classes in Smyrna High School, Smyrna Middle School, and Laverne Middle School. This motion reflects the amount in the approved general purpose school budget for all 3 schools and the required training. The amendment cost will cover on-site training and school coaching visits provided by Read 180. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve the purchase of Read 180 System 44 products and training for Smyrna High School, Smyrna Middle School, and Laverne Middle School. The total cost is $224,982.36.
Heard the motion? Mr. Hodge?
Second.
And I got a tie. Mr. Holliday, I was looking at you. Further discussion, no questions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. B.
B is the United States Department of Agriculture grant for healthy meals. The USDA has made funds available to support its new healthy meal pattern. The Tennessee Department of Education is making a large portion of these funds available to school districts for their use in one or more of the listed categories on the HHFKA fund selection section of TMAC's website. And the categories are listed below. All fund selections for this selection period must be made by September 25th, 2015. Liquidation of those funds is encouraged to take place as soon as possible so that the School Fund Authority can get full utilization of the funding in this school year. Each school food authority will be awarded up to $450 per school to increase, sustain, and enhance their success in providing healthy meals to students. This will equate to an additional $20,700 for Rutherford County School Food Authority. The following list represents approved uses of the funds. USDA approved software for menu planning, USDA approved software for nutrient analysis, training opportunities, menu publications, marketing and promotion materials related to the new meal pattern. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve Rutherford County's application through the Tennessee Department of Education for the USDA grant for healthy meals as presented.
Heard the motion? Mr. Estes
Second.
and Mr. Holliday. Discussions or questions? I hate that we hadn't had a work session. Do we know the percentage of participation in our cafeterias?
I know they're still working on that. I don't know if it's, if we can get a number, I can email it to y'all, but it may be a bit premature. I know the staff who work on that have been putting in some overtime to get it up and going.
And that may be an opportunity for Mr. Fred Blair to come and
Okay?
share with us the progress and the changes that the Department of Agriculture has mandated.
The annual changes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So that might be something that we can
Okay.
utilize in
we can do that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10.
Number 10, and if you recall, the state does not form a textbook committee typically to pick CTE textbooks. They leave more of that to the local. So the textbook adoption for a book not on the state list, Form ED 5196, local adoption of textbooks not on contract. The Career and Technical Education Instruction Department is requesting approval for local adoption of textbooks not on contract, not included in the official list of textbooks that the state doesn't publish, actually. The Event Audio Production in Sound System Design and Optimization, second edition, grades 11 and 12. The second one is Exercise Science. This is ACSM's Introduction to Exercise Science, first edition, grades 10 through 12. And Court Systems and Practices, Courts and Criminal Justice in America, second edition, and that's for grade 12. Recommend approval motion for Rutherford County to request approval for adoption of the textbooks listed above, not included in the official list of state textbooks.
Heard the motion?
So move.
Gordon? And Mr. Estes? Questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 11.
Number 11, this is the 2016 summer school calendar. The Instruction Department is requesting approval for the 2016 summer school calendar. Plans are for high school course offerings. Middle school student participation has diminished to less than 2 classrooms per site. We'll recommend holding summer school for only high school students. The high school site will be Riverdale High School. High school first semester course offerings from May 31st through June 24, 2016, while the second semester will be scheduled from June 27th through July 22nd, 2016. Transportation services are not provided. Tuition will remain at $100 per 1.5 credit for high school courses and $200 for driver education. Recommend approval. A motion to approve the Instruction Department's request for the 2016 summer school site and calendar as presented. I'd like to speak to that just a moment if I could. The middle school this last year was down to about 80 students between 2 sites. As we progress through with RTI, as we're doing a better job at tiers 2 and 3, we're just seeing less and less demand. So to put 2 teachers at a school site and then somebody to help supervise and all, I mean, the tuition it really doesn't pay for itself, and the number of students is really declining. And it's a credit to, I think we're doing a better job during the year, just really. So our recommendation is not to do the middle school next year. If you're just out of over probably 3,800, well, you take 6th, 7th, and 8th all together, you've got 10,000 students, and you had 80 that went to summer school. You know, you got over 10,000. So that's the economy of scale there is not particularly good. And the high school we have for a number of years, we used to have one on both ends of the county. Again, part of the cost in that. And so we have it at one site now, which we have for the last couple of years. And how many high schools? We had 300, how many? Right.
3 years. We had exactly 84 middle schoolers attend the 2 different sites that tied up about 8-9 personnel at that time. The cost is just not there. We have about, like Michelle said, about 11 middle school students.
And a lot of the high school are actually using it to graduate early. You know, you from summer school graduation, you see people coming through to gain it. We're helping reduce the cost for new high school buildings, Mr. Jordan. Well, honestly, with our online courses now, with night school still being offered, with the 7-period day in most of our high schools now, and with the 23 credit requirement, we require 1 more credit than the state does, we're doing a much better job of being able to meet that demand during the year. So there's not a huge need for summer school, even for high school now, but I'm really not ready to recommend to do away with it at this point.
So you had 300, and you had, did you say 79 that wanted to graduate, perhaps in December of the, or whatever, or the end of that summer? So then they needed one more thing maybe, or whatever. So the other 221, were they taking a course to get ahead of the game? Were they making up a course, or just a whole mixture?
I couldn't tell you the exact numbers, but a large portion of them are doing credit.
Recover. And they're taking classes to recover, and many of them are trying to get back on track so that they can graduate with their peers. That used to be a much larger number prior to our credit recovery program and using some of the technology we use for credit recovery in our high school for the last 2 years.
And it costs what? What does it cost to take a credit in summer?
It's there as half.
100?
And it's $200 for a driver's ed credit.
And that's because of the insurance and other things that go with that. We raised that
Plus
several
it's
years
small.
ago.
I can put 35 students
Right.
if needed in a regular academic credit, but you're looking at about 15 students in the driver's ed.
Thank you.
Okay, you've heard the motion, and I need a motion. Mr. Young? And Mr. Hodge. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 12.
Number 12 is proposed Rutherford County Schools calendar for 2016-17. This is the academic calendar. Recommend approval of the motion to approve Rutherford County Schools 2016-2017 academic calendar as presented. We made one change in this from what the committee that met and the teachers that met, and that was Mr. Snell came to me. We did registration this year on a Friday. We ran into some problems with if we had some handicapped kids that needed transportation, drivers have to call those parents, contact them. So when we registered on Friday, some of them had great difficulty getting everything in place by Monday, to be honest with you. Sometimes families are gone for the weekend. So what we have done, the same number of days are still there, but move registration day back to Thursday, and we'll take what was going to be a Wednesday or a Thursday and just move that to Friday. But as far as the professional days and teachers training, everything is there. It just swaps a day of the week to facilitate better the absorption of new people coming in. That's the difference.
Is there collaboration with the city system?
They follow us most of the time,
Okay.
except on some things.
Our calendars with the Murfreesboro City as well.
Thank you. Heard the recommendation? Mr. Hodge
Second.
and Mr. Holliday. Further discussion?
This regular school calendar, explain to me again now, if you would, exactly how we arrived at this. Not that I disagree with it necessarily, was there a committee, school people?
Yes, sir, there's a committee, there's a representative from each school. We have a representative from the board here as well, as far as one of the members of the instructional.
Which is Nancy Marcella, and at this time was Ann McCraw, was Josh Cooley as well. So at that point, we also have a representative from the RDA that holds a seat there as well. They discuss the possibilities, make recommendations, and Josh Cooley comes forward with those, presents those to me. I look through those to make sure we don't have an election day or something like that that we've overlooked. because we have so many people inside of our buildings that would probably pose a safety issue. Something like that, barring that, then I take that forward to Mr. Odom. Mr. Odom reviews that, and he makes recommendations, just like he did this time. We took it forward as it was. I didn't find anything that was an issue there. And he made that recommendation to shift that Friday start date to a Thursday. I shifted a teacher work day forward to Friday, and you have it in front of you now.
We have to schedule the full 200 days, Ms. Jordan.
Sure.
No.
I don't know if the other board members get any discussion on this or not. I'm sure you do. I know we have discussed some of these in the past when I was commissioner. The things that I hear constantly, and I don't know that there's a solution, and I'm not really advocating anything, but I hear a lot of criticism that we start so early. But the thing I hear more criticism about than that, and I do hear a lot on that, is these half days. I hear that a lot. Parents absolutely despise them. And it's because of child care. I know this board has discussed that before. I will move on.
Williamson County has late start Mondays. And it's actually catching on in a lot of places.
Of course, it's not, as anyone can easily tell, I am ancient, but I taught for years, and it's similar. But when I went to school, of course, we didn't start near this early, and we got out about the same time. But we didn't have a fall break, and we didn't have this. Well, let me put it to you this way: the average person gets 3 to 4 days at Christmas. 3 to 4, if they are lucky. And if it falls on the right day of the week, that kind of thing, they might get 4 days. For some reason, maybe somebody can tell me, teachers need 16 days. And that's a lot of cookies to bake. I don't really understand that. But I intend to vote for this because clearly the director, this is okay. I'm all right.
There's a lot of cookies that do have to be baked.
And a lot that have to be eaten. That's my part of it.
There's a lot of value to be said about separating teachers from children as well for a week or
Okay. Fair, well put.
Yeah. Point right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting up with me.
Anybody else? I think we have a motion and a second, don't we? Unless there's further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 13, Mr. Odom.
Number 13 is a memorandum of understanding with professional educators, the MOU is what you referred to this. The Board of Education management team and the professional educators of Rutherford County, represented by the Rutherford Education Association, in the collaborative conferencing process have reached an agreement as presented in the memorandum of understanding. Recommended approval. The motion is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Rutherford County Board of Education and the professional educators of Rutherford County as presented.
I asked Ms. Barnes if she would
Yes, I
would
think that'd be
speak.
fine.
Yes, sir, certainly, thank you. As you know, the Board of Education Management Team and the professional educators, as represented by the Rutherford Education Association through the collaborative conferencing process, have gone through training, we have had multiple meetings, and we have followed the collaborative process to address issues raised that impact professional educators and to brainstorm to find solutions for those issues through a lengthy process that we really try to identify, solve, and come to an agreement. So I can say that as of today, we have drafted a memorandum of understanding. We've targeted 3 specific issues in that MOU, and it's being presented to the Board of Education tonight for approval. I think we have several of our Rutherford Education teams here tonight with us. I'm sure they're very excited to see this process come to a conclusion.
Happy to see the current president, Mr. Gifford, here, and past president, Ms. Mitchell, and
Future president.
Future president. Okay.
Ms. Barnes, could you name those 3 areas just for the public?
I can certainly. The first area and the collaborative process only allow for certain topics to be discussed in the collaborative conferencing process. So we identified salary, and one of the issues with salary is providing information early in the budget process for professional educators to understand how that process works, and actually time to meet with our assistant superintendent of finance to help them answer questions as they go back to their professional educators and explain the nuances of the budget process and how we have to reach certain numbers throughout that entire time. We talked about professional leave. As you know, we allocate professional leave days to each school for principals to distribute at their discretion for professional training and use within their buildings. And so we want to make sure that our professional educators are aware of those days and have the ability to request days should they want to seek training outside of the school system. And then the third is representation on the calendar committee, which Mr. Zako said that had been happening, but we wanted that to be a part of the MOU. So that's a non-voting member represented by the REA that sits on that calendar committee. And those are the 3 topics that we are reaching on.
And the salary portion of that, that would include supplements paid to various people for doing various things, yes or no?
The way it reads is it's talking about the base salary of each educator shall be according to the salary schedule as approved by the Board of Education. So it's very general. Then it talks about the educators' pay dates, their access to electronic payroll notification, and to direct deposit.
Thank you.
Board members.
Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Holliday and Ms. Moore. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'm not sure that we get applause that often, but always grateful. And the key word has been collaborative, and not only between the association and the teams, but also with board members and association members. And grateful for that collaborative spirit and the partnership that has been developed, and because we're all working towards the same goal, and that's enhancing the public education experience for our children. Number 14, we have 3 pages of names. Do you think we need to read all 3 pages, or?
It's up to you.
Board members, I'm seeing some head shaking no.
Move we don't read them.
Okay.
These are outstanding people. We're
Practice.
in good shape.
I saw Chairman Hodge going no. Okay, so if you want to just read the,
Introduction, kind of.
yes,
The following teachers have met the criteria for tenure in accordance with the new tenure law. Remember, the legislature changed how you attain tenure, and that's why we've had to wait a while. You first have to hold a valid Tennessee teaching license. You have served Rutherford County Schools for 5 years, used to be 3, in 45 months within a 7-year period, the last 2 in regular, not an interim position. You have demonstrated an overall performance of above expectations or significantly above expectations on their team evaluation during the last 2 consecutive years of the 5-year period. That's called a score 4 or 5 teacher effect scores, what most teachers recognize that as. Or if previously held tenure under the previous guidelines and returned to Rutherford County Schools, meet the 2-year probationary period and tenure is then reactivated. You know, the real difference in this, for those that receive tenure this way, can also lose tenure. It used to be for life, and now if you drop back to a 1 or 2. If that effectiveness drops, you drop back out again. 2 consecutive years or 1 or 2. So the legislature, that's another legislature change to how tenure is now awarded and handled. So it's a recommend approval. The motion is to approve the recommendation of the Director of Schools to award tenure to the teachers who meet criteria for 2015.
The motion, Mr. Hodge and Mr. Young. Discussions or questions?
I have one question.
Ms. Moore?
I don't know how pertinent it is, but on the last bullet point where it says if previously held tenure under previous guidelines returned to Rutherford County Schools meet the 2-year probationary period that tenure is reactivated, does that probationary period also include the criteria of the evaluation scores as with the?
Ms. Moore, I'll answer that for you. No, it does not. If someone previously held tenure under the old tenure law, left our system and came back, then we have the right to, we have to award that 2-year probationary period, at the end of which time you must either reactivate your tenure or release it. So principals have that choice, but the score, the 4 and 5, does not play into that. Although I can say that we do track those scores, and we have seen excellent scores with all of those teachers coming back to our system who previously held tenure.
If a teacher comes to us from another county, Ms. Barnes, and has been granted tenure there and the rules are the same, would that be correct? Or no?
No, we do. We start tenure over in Rutherford County.
Okay.
It's important.
It's tenure with the district and not the state.
Okay, so we can, could we grant tenure to that person if they had tenure elsewhere?
It is acceptable under state law, but Rutherford County has elected to have a teacher serve those 5 years to earn those scores and then be.
So we would not do that?
We do not do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Michaels. You keep us on track. Number 15, I think Mr. Sanders is going to address. Board members, I did attend that meeting, and it wasn't very long, so his presentation probably won't be very long either.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that we had in new business is we are issuing or will be issuing a request for proposal. For the 2017 benefit year, we will be auditing dependent coverage, which this will have been 5 years out since we did that. The last time we did that, we found about 6% of dependents or claimed dependents should not have been claimed. And the other piece we will be auditing is spouses who, through their work, have group medical insurance. At some point, Ms. Street will bring back a recommendation on that request for proposal.
Yes, sir. Questions for Mr. Sandvik? 16 is general discussion by board members. Anybody?
Sometimes I'd like to list a few things, but anyway, you want to work it in.
Okay. Why don't we do that now, Mr. Odom?
I really do not want to be remiss in thanking Mr. Steve Hart with the Rutherford County Emergency Medical and Mike Nunley also. But they've conducted 2 sessions here, full sessions at the time it's actually been 4 sessions, one for first aid, one for the CPR. You remember that we mandated? So they came over and conducted with the coaches, full classes both times. They actually brought 3 people with them when they did, so they've made a real commitment, Mr. Nunley and Mr. Hart, in leading that for us. So I don't want to say on TV tonight that we really thank the Emergency Medical Service of Rutherford County for really stepping up and help us train our coaches and associated people for the betterment of our students. I feel good about this,
And I think that's probably one of the more important initiatives that the board has carried through here over the last few years to make sure that we have medically trained individuals out on these practice fields or on these playing floors with our students, and I'm pleased that we're moving on with that.
Okay, another thing is, we received today from Advance Ed, of course, we completed the Advance Ed, the old, what used to be SACS, we used to call it Advance Ed now. So they delivered our plaque today, basically which says, Rutherford County School System, having met the requirements established by the Advance Ed Accreditation Commission and Board of Trustees is hereby accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, Council on Accreditation and School Improvements. And this is valid through June 30th, 2020.
All right. That word collaborative just continues to come up, doesn't it? With
The name of the game now. But
central office and educators and.
well, doctors collaborate. We should too.
Yes, sir.
I think we all come out better by doing that, you know. Another thing I think that's in your packet, you do have the count from the 16th full day. Point out a thing or two that you might want to take a look at that. We are basically 1,156 over the end of last year, and it's 1,000 and something over the same day last year. 1,074 over the same day last year. So anyway we want to twist the data, we're up over 1,000 students. One of the really, really strange things here, Mr. Zago came to see me today to talk about this. If you'll add up the high school growth there, it's over 1,000 students. Over 1,000 of our growth is coming in high school.
Tennessee Promise, people located here to take advantage of that?
I don't know. We have got to be. I don't want people to wait till high school to move to Rutherford County, but for whatever reason, I'm not sure that we're not attracting people back into our high school that may have done some other options and things like that. You've got labs, you've got a CTE program, really second to none. You've got some real opportunities. You've got IB programs, you've got a lot of advanced placement offerings for students and all, prepare them. So I think Rutherford County Schools is very attractive. But the growth, but let me point out something else to you. Look at the size of your ninth grade there. 4,113. As I look at that, that's the largest number across the whole grade spectrum. If you look at the eighth grade that's coming on, that's larger than Mr. Zago appropriately pointed out to me today, that when we graduate that 3,550 in the 12th grade, we're going to grow by 300 without any other growth, simply because there's going to be 3,850 moving from 8th grade on to the high school. So without a 3% growth, from outside, you're going to jump another 300 there if the pattern continues. Okay, so that's for yours to look at, and schools, really, patterns are sometimes difficult to understand. So
there was a newscast, and I believe it was yesterday at 11 o'clock, Channel 2, and it was results of a population study of Middle Tennessee, and the expected growth in every county in I believe all of Middle Tennessee in the next 35 years, and until 2050. And Putnam County, Cookeville, and for the life of me, I have no idea why anybody would ever move to Cookeville, but I suppose somebody might want to do so. All dirt roads do lead there. I know that. Anyway, 30. I'm sorry. I know I've made somebody mad. I know I have. I'm kidding. 35% growth in Putnam County. Seriously, 35% growth in Davidson County in that 35 years. Rutherford County, 110%. So our population will more than double. And frankly, I think the county commission is fully cognizant of that fact. They know that. And that's a lot of schools, isn't it? That's a lot of teachers.
Mr. Zago pointed out to me, which is compounds this, if you look the next 2 to 3 years, if you take that number with more going into high school, 300 more a year or something, and then you add 3% growth from people moving into the area, remember it kind of compounds itself through those 4 years of high school. Very quickly, you're going to add another 1,000 or so students to our high schools. I mean, it just from looking at your numbers in middle school and coming on up. So it's out there.
For 2017, you're going to look at every high school with the exception of one being greater than 2,000. Most, there'll be 3 of them over 2,300 in 2 years. I'm talking 24 months.
I think we don't speak to it specifically, but there are transition points that we kind of reflect. They're 5th to 6th grade when we go into middle school, and certainly 8th to 9th grade as we go into high school. But particularly as we go into high school, the Tennessee Promise program and those opportunities beyond high school, qualifying for those programs is a little bit of a challenge. Without the counselors and the graduation coaches and all of those resources that the public schools offer. I have a little bit of experience with the homeschool community, and I'll tell you, there are homeschoolers who are coming in at 9th grade. And I think that may be exactly what we see there with that extra boost of 9th graders.
Earned by students each year. Talking about a value for a family, you start multiplying that. I did a little multiplication. It was $250,000 saved by Laverne High School last year to their families. Just college credits.
This is really in its infancy, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot more that can be done there. Yeah.
I would love for the county commission to have an opportunity to hear Mr. Duke's presentation and even go a little further with the descriptions of the intervention, because with the tier 1, that's everybody, but then tier 2 and tier 3 takes additional professional help, and that's those professionals we have out in the audience tonight. That it takes people to intervene and to help these students progress. And I just don't know that we make that clear enough to the county commission that our budget is pointed towards benefiting our children, not just the general education, but to make sure we intervene and make sure they're where they're supposed to be.
I'd be stunned if Rhonda Allen wouldn't at least like to have that in front of the Health and Ed Committee. And there's nobody more pro-education than that committee. And I'm sure Mr. Duke would charm them right out of their shoes. Good presentation tonight.
Yes, it was.
And attacking those reading levels is, I guess it's the most critical thing that we do, I guess, as far as future education is concerned and getting them on track.
You could even go a step further and go up to their state lawmakers.
Yes.
Changing mine on charter schools.
That would be excellent.
It was discussed at the Smyrna Town Council work session that they now have 2 opportunities just in the town of Smyrna for postgraduate studies with Mott Lowe and now the Tennessee Technology Center that will open soon. The Smyrna campus of Mott Lowe posted the largest increase of any post-secondary school. Over 19% increase there at that Smyrna campus. And so the education continues within our county's borders.
Middle, I think, was flat, weren't they? I
Went
believe,
down 0.6%.
and I think they made that up with transfers. I think that was in the paper this morning, I believe. So, and Modelo has shown absolutely just a lot of growth in that new facility down there. It's beautiful.
We meet next, Ms. Michaels?
Got 2 or 3 things,
Oh, you have some more? I'm sorry. I apologize.
another 2 or 3 things.
I was rushing you along, Mr. Odom. I
You
apologize.
also have Steve Solomon's monthly update on computers that are installed. You have the first months, which we gave you back, starting now, it was in September. This is the second one. We've received all the computers, so we have not had them all placed. It's been really interesting to watch how Mr. Solomon handled that. Dell, even though we told him ahead of time, had trouble making all those deliveries on time for the number of computers that we ordered when you get up 3,000 plus computers to do. And he said, but you promised me, you told me what they started shipping him the larger screen computers at the same price. And that's a real bonus. So we put most of those in high school and middle, you know, because they will do more writing and all with that. He still fussed at him and said, but you got me behind my track. I got to do it. They sent him people over here to open the boxes, the cardboard boxes. They'll furnish people to open the boxes and carry the cardboard outside. So he's kind of held their feet to the fire in that, if you want to know.
Go get him, Mr. Solomon.
There you go.
You did ask for some information about, you have your policy in there, ADM, or Administrative Procedure 1-6. Several of you had called us during the time. How many non-faculty volunteer coaches does TSSAA allow? That's on the second page of that. Now, a school can have faculty volunteers. In addition to that, does not count on the TSSAA's total number of coaches you see on the field. So when you see that football team run out and you got a lot of coaches on the sideline, this would be your non-faculty volunteers, and the others could be very well faculty members that you see on there. But anyway, that's...
Are the administrators aware of this? You
Well-
may see a lot more volunteers.
a lot of them are really gentlemen in the building or something that's doing a whole lot of the times that you do that. Another thing, we did receive, I guess I better not give the figure out. We got a figure today for graduation rate that is very pleasing to us, but I guess it's still embargoed. It's up, really looks good. So we'll share that with you as soon as it's unembargoed, I guess. They did a good job. Kids are staying with us longer at a higher rate. That's the good thing there. It's not about the number. It's about more kids that are finishing high school and choosing to stay, and our graduation coaches and all helping make that happen. You will receive some information because at the county level, the steering committee is considering for classified employees only, the contribution rate or how you deal with retirement. Remember last year teachers, your certified teachers, new ones coming in have the hybrid plan. It's some 401k, some the old state retirement. So a couple of commissioners or so asked for a report. If they did that with classified employees, what would that do? We haven't sent it out to our employees. That the one that you saw, that email was actually addressed to county general employees and all, and not ours. I think it'd really be confusing to teachers too, to do it. Everybody sees it. Oh my, they're changing all of my retirement, and that's not true. But it may be something that you, as a board, want to monitor, because if the county were to do something for classified employees on that level, then we have classified employees, so we would have a decision. I think your chairman actually talked to the mayor about it, so I'll just pitch the ball to you if you want to say anything.
He just reminded me that any proposal would be for new employees, that you cannot change a program already in place. So if they did make a change, it would be again for new, and he would not recommend or be for that. So I'm pleased that the mayor is looking out for not only the county general employees, but also ours too. So it's a presentation that was made last year and has been asked to be represented. And I'll make sure that Ms. Michaels reminds all of us of that evening, and I'm sure board members, I'll also be there too.
So be presented to the steering committee on the 9th, which is a Wednesday. I believe it's 5:30, isn't it?
Well, I was afraid some of our employees might hear something or news
Right.
media coverage, and you as board members start getting calls, and that's why we wanted to kind of let you know ahead of time so you could answer back.
Yeah, again, remind you that our certified members are covered by state statute.
There is a danger here, and I know you all are aware of it, but the people sometimes come here to teach, and one of the reasons that they do that, and we can pick up so many excellent teachers, is because of our retirement plan and facilities and a lot of other reasons. I think, well, if you change new hires, which has already been done once, right? There's been some changes there. If you keep fiddling with that, I don't think it's a very good idea most of the time, but I haven't read the proposal, so I don't know. I guess we'll get to hear it together, won't we?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on another area, if I might. And I assume Mr. Zago or Mr. Odom can answer this one. But this is a good time of year for it. If we're up so many students, and we are, what's the lead time before we realize that Riverdale needs another English teacher and desperately, and we've got 30 more students or 60 or 80, we can't have overloaded classes? What is the lead time for us to adjust to that and to find the personnel?
Yeah, usually we can find the personnel unless it's math or some of the sciences or one of the sometimes foreign language, really hard to staff positions. You have a truncated report from Mr. Zago. We shortened that spreadsheet. The full spreadsheet, you're welcome to see it, but it calculates the pupil-teacher ratio per grade per school. So as schools are turning it in, he highlights that if it goes over the 20-to-1, then the numbers turn red. If it's a couple below or so, it turns green. Do we need to move a teacher? What does this look like? So we've learned and have a process in line as numbers are turned in, Mr. Jordan, to do that. But most principals are not shy about requesting that teacher if they earn it. So that's not been a problem.
And the obvious question, Mr. Zago, I know you want to talk. The obvious thing too is to ask the reverse question: What if the students are not there, and you have to transfer a teacher? I guess you would have to transfer a teacher if you.
We did not doing that this year, not in positions that had teachers in the still building. This year we did the best job we've ever done before. About 90% of all of our positions were filled before, are not filled, but given before July. For registration, of course, like I did with today, I was predicting based on what our numbers were last year, plus that 2.5% trying to sign teachers.
We did that. We assigned teachers, for example, Stewart Creek High School. We assigned them 12 positions before we ended the year last year, getting the recruitment fair that Ms. Barnes and her staff puts on as well. So we've been very active in providing those positions early. I can say for high schools, I've only given out about 4 positions since the middle of July.
Special ed, what's the ratio in special ed?
The great thing about the program that Mr. Duke and his staff is doing, it's actually reducing our percentage of special ed for us overall in Rutherford County. So I'm able, for example, I moved a position from one school to another school, so I haven't had to add a single new position as of yet. I've had some positions vacated through attrition or through someone transferring out of the school and taking that position and moving forward. We've been very frugal with those positions as
Another reason to thank Mr. Duke, I guess.
There was a number of staff members that were repurposed or placed there for that program, but we're seeing the results of that in saving staff for those other pull-out type programs.
So how long would it be before we had a serious problem? If we were over, let's say, and we had overloaded classes in any subject, I don't care where or what school, I assume we'd have to report that. I mean, we're going to have,
They can see it.
yeah, okay.
Lost 20 over there, but I had to assign 6 positions because of the way they fell out. This school gained 20 positions. This school may have only lost 6, so I couldn't have taken a teacher per year, but I had to turn around and give one there. But I only gave out 6 elementary positions this year that were teaching positions.
So state can see it, you said?
It's the electronic system, when we enter it in now, they can go in and see it reports straight to them. Actually, they have a server.
Right.
And so they pull what we used to call preliminary report, do you remember that term? And
Very well.
pupil teacher ratio and all, I mean, they get all that themselves, so it's electronic now.
Jeff gets real upset with me if I don't do a very good job. It costs him $74,000 per position if we're over. We don't do that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Our last board meeting was August 13th, and on August 14th, I had an announcement of my candidacy for State House of Representatives. And that evening, I shared that a significant part of the motivation for my candidacy was the frustration that this board and the Murfreesboro City School Board have experienced in representing our interests to our state legislators. Collectively, we represent over 50,000 students between Rutherford County Schools and Murfreesboro City Schools, well over 100,000 voters in those households. And yet, the clear direction that we offer from our area of expertise, education, doesn't seem to resonate with our representatives in Nashville. And for that reason, I have announced my candidacy for State House of Representatives. You know, generally, since 2010, the state of Tennessee has been characterized by education reform, and as such, we've seen the governor kind of step back a little bit and admit to some failings where he didn't consult the teachers in the classroom about some of that education reform. Now, he's seeking to remedy that by putting together a 14-member teacher advisory panel, and one of those 14 is a Rutherford County educator. In addition to that, he had only 4 appointments to our curriculum review committee, and one of those 4 appointments is a Rutherford County educator. These are examples of the excellence that's occurring in Rutherford County, our leadership on education, and yet our representatives are out of step with that. I want to ask for grace and patience from my fellow board members for the next 16-plus months, because I fully intend to use my seat here on the Rutherford County School Board as a bully pulpit to speak to these education matters. And outside of this area, I'll speak to many other matters as I seek a position for state representative.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday, and we admire your desire to serve, because not exactly a place I think I would want to serve.
Brave man.
But I admire that you do, so thank you. Ms. Joyce, anything else, Mr. Odom, before I cut you off again? Okay, good. Congratulations, that was certification, and we meet again September 22nd, and we have some district meetings coming up too. So good. Chaired by Mr. Young, which everybody's welcome to attend. Okay, great. It'll be a little while before we're back again. I think I can speak for Chairman Hodge and myself that, again, we're so grateful to get to serve you board members, and again, thank you for these opportunities, and thank you for the work that you do.
Talk about, I forgot, talk about Roy Waldron, because I think they'll find that interesting about the mobilization.
Mobilizing over the next 2 weeks to get that started, so
Great, great. All right.
we're in process of that, and of course on John Coleman, we are still kind of in limbo over the Corps of Engineers decision on that issue.
We will continue to be hopeful. Maybe prayerful too, so. Anybody else? Good. Long meeting, but very fruitful and an interesting meeting. So we stand adjourned.